Evening and welcome to another installment of History in the Making. My name's Eric South. Glad you all could join us. So, after last week's absolutely incredible presentation by Sarah about the Harbinger, we're going to get back to what's actually in the book, and tonight we're going to be covering the other half of education, which is parenting. Parenting, as we know, is the most important thing that we can do as adults to bring up our kids the right way. So we're going to open in prayer, and we're going to jump right in. And then we'll talk about some of the other things that are going on. So, Father, we thank you for once again bringing us together. We thank you once again that you've purposed it in our hearts to learn what your word has to say about the topics of the day. We thank you that your word promises that he who lacks wisdom and knowledge, let him ask, and you will give it to him in abundance. Your word promises where two or more are gathered together, there you are with them. We may be small, but we are mighty in spirit. Please come. Join us, impart your wisdom and knowledge to us, and to you be all praise, power, honor, and glory. We declare these things in the blessed name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. So, real quick, has anybody been keeping up on Florence and what's going on with that?
But it isn't over yet.
No, and now it's hooking north, and it looks like Virginia, West Virginia, maybe in parts of D.C. are going to get clobbered with some of this. The last I heard, there were 18 dead. A 1-year-old was swept out of his mother's arms. Just earlier today, she drove into fast water, and she was trying to get back to land, and a wave came and took the child. So, what's going on from there, I don't know. I know I've heard it's getting into parts of Tennessee. They're expecting some severe inland flooding. So, yeah, just continue to keep those people in prayer. It's not a particularly intense hurricane. They're saying there's only 30-mile-an-hour winds, but it's dumping up to 3 feet of water. Yeah, it's dumping up to like 3.5 feet of water. Yeah. That's a lot of water anywhere. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, that's not drivable unless you're in a high-rise pickup truck, and still then.
Even you can ask Chris. Even some of the big 2.5 and 6 ton Army vehicles cannot traverse that much water, can they? The big 2.5, the big deuce and a halves, they have a hard time getting through that much water.
Just a bit much.
That's when you need a boat.
And there have been a lot of boat rescues I've seen, not only for the animals but humans and whatnot, because people were they panicked and then left their animals. And
what I was able to read is that some of them that evacuated had to leave on buses because they didn't have means to get out otherwise, and they weren't able to take their animals with them to the shelters. That's what I heard was the main reason why a lot of animals were left behind.
But I thought they were supposed to call on that. I mean, that upsets me. I wouldn't leave my animal behind.
Yeah.
I would put it up on my shoulder. Well, unless it was a Great Dane.
Yeah, Great Dane may be a bit much.
I think you could walk beside me, swim beside me.
Yeah.
So you heard the latest about the confirmation of our new
Kavanaugh?
Yeah, judge. You heard that, didn't you?
I've heard that a lady from 36 years ago has come forward saying that he tried to sexually assault her.
They had on the news tonight. I was watching it. It made a comment there that this is the allegations and her statements were very, very similar to those of the gal who tried to do the other Supreme Court judge back in '91. Mm-hmm. I can't say the names now, but
91?
Yeah, when the black guy.
That wasn't Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
That's the name.
Because don't you remember, there's some gal came out against him for sexual
harassment, yeah.
But according to what was blurred right on the news, and they had even in black a stream text across there, that it was very, very similar to what her allegations were.
Huh.
So guess where that's coming from?
Yeah. Well, and I read today on...
You didn't know.
Yeah, I read today on Drudge Report that the individual in question said that she didn't even know that this was going to become a topic until she started seeing it on the news. So now she's coming out. She wants her story told her way, and she's willing to testify before the Senate committee about these allegations. So,
Where was she when this thing first started?
and this brings up something else that I've read. It's called the Time's Up movement. And it's being fostered and grown by people that are getting blindsided by this after 30 years. In criminal law, everything but murder, there's a statute of limitation of
Right.
7 years. And these people are waiting 20, 25, 30 plus years to make these allegations. It's like, if we have a statute of limitations in criminal law of 7 years, why are people all of a sudden getting their lives destroyed for something that happened 30 and 40 years ago?
Because they're trying to make a stink out of things. They don't want him nominated.
So, well, it's not just him. I mean, look at the Weinstein case. Look at
The whole movement that
Yeah,
came
the whole
after
Me
that.
Too movement.
Everybody. Then you could take 10 to 20 men in television broadcasting, high executive levels. All these people were doing things. Even a female actress was being blamed, and she's now coming back against the other female that accused her and said, "You need to recant that." The thing of it is they're tarnishing people's reputations before anything would be out. But when it happened originally, when you get raped, you have to come forward right away, because all the evidence and everything else will be
Right
null
there.
and void.
Yeah.
And too much time will go past that it will look like a vengeful thing anyway. That's the same thing with this whole movement.
I can't think of anybody who would be able to run for anything
Yeah.
because of something,
Yeah.
we've done in
That
our
far
past.
gone,
And, I know I'm a different person today than
I just this year I was accused of sexual harassment. We have a company that comes in and does the plants at my employer. There was this young lady that was crawling around the floor on her knees. And I said, "Why don't you just bend over and water the plants so you don't have to walk around on your knees and destroy your knees?" Boom, sexual harassment. Because I was worried about her walking around the floor on her knees and ruining her knees. But because I used the phrase bend over, it was instant sexual harassment. And she didn't say, "Hey, what'd you mean by that?" She went to her employer went to my boss went to HR, and now I have a small note in my case file on my permanent record at my employer for sexual harassment because she misunderstood what I said.
Don't you just love it?
I think we need to go to about,
Parenting. But see, that actually ties into parenting.
wait a minute.
Some of these people needed better parenting.
Exactly. Some of this ties into parenting because of we were raising our kids to not be quite so sensitive. If we raised our kids so not everybody got a trophy, if not everybody got a ribbon, if kids, when they misbehaved, remembered what the good old 1-2 was for, maybe we wouldn't have this Me Too movement because, one, men would be more respectful to women because, as we're going to cover here, where do boys learn how to treat their wives and girlfriends? By how their dad treats their mother.
Yep.
And how do women know how to treat their husbands? By how they watch their mother treat their dad. All part of parenting. So the whole Me Too movement, the whole Time's Up movement, all of it would be null and void if we had people that could stand up and actually parent their kids. But unfortunately, the state has stepped in and bound them up so much that now the kids basically raise themselves. And that's all things we're going to cover tonight.
The word's very clear on how you do it.
Hmm?
In fact, you'll probably be touching some of it.
I sort of skirted around of it. Just like there's over 17 verses just on what fathers are expected to do.
Well, for my class that I did on Saturday, we hit on a little bit of that in Hebrews. And basically what it is there's 3 steps. The first is talking to them,
Yep.
having a chat with them about what's happened. The second one is you reproof them. And the third one is you well, I guess actually in the word it says flog them.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually says flog. But
Yeah.
Of course, you don't have to do that, but it's right there.
And spare the rod, spoil the child.
Exactly.
Your hands are made for loving.
Yeah.
You do not use what is meant for love to correct and punish.
Spare the rod and spoil the kid.
Yeah.
Or, that's what the modern day thing says.
Yeah. But anyway, so the first thing I was going to do is I want to cover the UN Convention on Rights of Children.
Well,
Yeah, I thought this would be a real fun way to start. So basically what this says is that the United Nations, this omnipresent organization, decided that they were going to tell the rest of the world how their citizens could raise their kids. So now the United States played an active role in drafting of the convention, commented on nearly all the articles, and proposed the original text of 7 of them. 3 of these come directly from the United States Constitution, were proposed by the administration of Ronald Reagan. The convention was adopted by the UN General Assembly on 20 November 1989 and came into effect 2nd of September 1990. So, now, does anybody know what the UNICEF is? Or the UNCRC? So now we have a little history of it. The UNCRC aims to protect and promote the rights of all children around the world. It was the first international treaty to integrate all human rights in reference to children, allowing them to participate in family, culture, and social aspects of life. It emphasized the right to survival, development, and protection against abuse, neglect, exploitation. It also addresses issues with education, health, healthcare, juvenile justice, and the rights of children with disabilities. Now, on the surface, that sounds okay, doesn't it? That sounds like a good thing.
If they would only do what they say,
But
really.
the problem is, our Constitution says that whatever's not enumerated to the government belongs to the people. Well, who are people? Parents. So here we have some organization that is not even governed by the U.S. Constitution, drafting this piece of legislation that every citizen on the planet is supposed to obey about how to raise the kids. Now, who's going to decide what's in the best interest of the children for survival, development, protection against abuse, neglect, or exploitation? Who gets to determine what those rules are? It's supposed to be the parents. Under this grand omnibus, it's a government. The one world government, which is what the UN is unfortunately becoming. It also addresses the issue of education, healthcare, juvenile justice, and the rights of children with disabilities. Okay, it sounds great. Sounds great. But in Nazi Germany in 1936, what did the Nazis do that was they considered humane to people with disabilities? They euthanized them, killed them all. They went through the mental hospitals and the disability hospitals, killed them all. That was even before they started targeting the Jews. So who's going to decide what's in the best interest of children with disabilities? Is somebody going to say, well, are they really worth spending all this money on? Because children with disabilities, even moderate disabilities, have extra needs that cost extra money. And if you're going to be paying for every kid on the planet, well, there's only so many you can save.
Well, and you got to look at the healthcare, the Obama. Some of that was cutting out the benefits for children that were mentally handicapped. The funds for certain disabilities was being cut from the parents who are already trying to survive. And I mean, it's already starting. I mean, even when you come to the education, schools were saying, you know what, you can't bring your children here if you haven't gotten all their shots. So that was the parent trying to protect their children because the shots have things in them that are causing defects in these children that's going crazy. So if a parent's being told by a school they can't enroll them so they can't get educated, this program totally failed. But they're still telling people what to do.
And see, the United States has never ratified this thing. We have never ratified this thing. So we are not subjected to it. Even though we participated in drafting it, the Senate has never ratified it, the House has never ratified it, and the President has never signed it ratified. That is a big point of contention that's going on right now, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. So on the surface, a bill can look great. This is what I call a feel-good law. Okay, let's make sure all the kids in the world have a universal chance at things. On the surface, sounds great. Until you start thinking, well, who's going to figure out what's best for every kid? Is some omnipresent bureaucrat 10,000 miles from nowhere going to decide, oh, well, this is how I raised my kids, so this is how every kid on the planet's going to be raised? So when you get down into the meat of it, it's not it's just a bill of goods. It's a feel-good law. So any comments up to this point?
Don't you feel good though?
No. Now, how many people have even heard of this thing? I know there's at least 2 of us here that have. So,
I've heard of such things. Of course, then they also, have to put out that small arms treaty.
yeah.
Go there.
Yeah, and that's, I intentionally left that subject alone. That's something we can talk about off camera. All right, and then in February 16th, 95, Madeleine Albright, at the time the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, signed the convention. However, through general supportiveness of the convention, Bill Clinton did not submit it to the Senate. Likewise, Bush, 43, did not submit it to the Senate. Neither did President Obama, which described the failure to ratify the convention as an embarrassment, or as embarrassing, and had promised to review this. The Obama administration said it intended to submit the convention to the Senate, but also failed to do so.
No, they passed other stuff.
So now, thinking about, we'll just go back to the last 2 presidents. President Obama and President Bush 43. And we're going to touch again on education because that's what we're talking about. Everybody knows about Common Core. Do you know how Common Core became so easy to get into the schools?
I think you told us once, but I forgot.
Because of the No Child Left Behind Act that President Bush 43 signed. The No Child Left Behind says, basically, if a child doesn't get material at grade level, we'll go ahead and keep moving him up with his classmates so that he's not embarrassed by being left behind, and then just gradually work him up to grade level. I can tell you it's more of an embarrassment to have a child in 12th grade reading at a 10th grade or 9th grade level than it would be for an 18-year-old to be a sophomore in high school but reading at a sophomore level. Because this child, while he may be in with his peers of the same age, he has to have different books. He has to have a different learning program. He has to have different tests. Which is more embarrassing, having one stack of, here's this stack of material for the rest of the class, and here's this stack for little Johnny. Which is more embarrassing in the long run? Being one in a crowd?
Well, not being left behind doesn't mean they're not left behind.
Mm-hmm.
They are left behind educationally.
Mm-hmm. They are.
Because we are not ensuring that they're learning the things they need to learn. They've actually, it sickens me to know that they don't do the basic things anymore, and these kids have no idea how to balance a checkbook. They have no idea how to do even basic sewing, no idea how to do basic cooking. All they know is fast food, going out to eat, and if their parents actually taught them how to cook, there's where they learn those things in the household, but they don't know. And some of those things are very important for them, and not only the social aspect, but for them to find a proper partner.
Yeah. And see, that's all what we're going to get into. That's actually going to be the other half of parenting. So, any questions, comments, concerns up to this point? Okay, now the opposition to this. The opposition to ratify by some religious groups, some of whom claim it conflicts with the U.S. Constitution, has apparently played a significant role in the not of ratification of this treaty so far. Active opposition to the convention in the U.S. has been a concerted in the political conservative groups. Senator Jess Helms, the former chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, described it as a bag of worms, an effort to chip away at the U.S. Constitution. Some Americans oppose the CRC with reasoning that the nation already has in place everything the treaty espouses, therefore it would make no practical difference. Which is true. If we're already doing everything the treaty says, then why do we need to sign something agreeing with the rest of the world? Shouldn't the rest of the world just follow our model without a treaty? So, anything else up to that point? Okay. Parental rights. Yes, I know I'm skipping over large parts of this. Some supporters of homeschooling have expressed a concern that the convention will subvert the authority of the parents. One of the most controversial tenets of the convention are that participatory rights granted to the child. The convention champions youth voices in new way in Article 12 states, parties shall ensure to the child who is capable of forming his or her own views the right to express those views freely in all matters affecting the child. The views of the child being given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child shall, in particular, be provided with the opportunity to be heard in any judicial and administrative proceeding affecting the child. That sounds to me like this convention wants to tell the parents that the child's going to raise himself. Isn't that what it sounds like to you?
Well, I've heard that there's cases where children under the age of 18 are being brought in front of judges if they want to do a sexual reassignment before the age of 18.
Yeah. And there's also such a thing as the parent emancipation.
Yes, I have heard that.
Okay, has everybody else heard of this? Okay, parent emancipation is that in some extreme cases, a child, through an advocate, usually provided by the state, which is basically the same thing as a public defender, can petition the courts at any age before the age of 18 to be emancipated, which means that they are now completely self-reliant. They no longer look to their parents for any assistance in food, clothing, housing, job, nothing. They are of legal status to be considered the age of majority, which is 18 in most states. And then at that point, the parents lose the rights to be able to advise, or in some case, tell the child certain things they're going to do when it comes to like medical care, schooling and education, things like that. It's a very rare thing. If memory serves, back in the mid-'80s, there was actually a movie made about it. It had...
there was an actress that, I want to say it was Britney Spears did it, and she was abused.
Drew Barrymore did it.
Drew Barrymore did it.
And Tiffany tried, the singer.
Yeah.
So, yes, there are a few cases where it happens. If I remember, Drew Barrymore actually even played the young girl in the movie that tried to have it done. So, you know, I can understand in some extreme cases where a child just is basically taking care of the parents, where it can happen. I do not agree with it. Scripture says that you are to be under the authority until the age of majority. And if you're 16 and you can't live with your parents anymore, well, that's not being very biblical there. You know, you're still under their authority. So.
But it has to go back to how the parents are raising their children, how they're treating them, how they're actually providing for them and stuff like that. Now, I don't remember exactly where, but if a parent isn't taking care of a child, then...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree.
I feel that they need to have a different way. If the child could support themselves, because, granted, they're a superstar or something like that, hey, but that's not the case in all aspects. And, you know, you got druggy parents, or you got parents that ran away, and one parent that's trying to work 10 jobs to support, but they're never there. If they're never there, how is that helping that child?
Right.
I think, I mean, there's a lot of failures in all of our systems.
Oh, yeah.
And we could pull cases here and there. and not one case can set the
precedents.
standard for
Right.
all cases. Yeah, it's sad that it happens, but I understand why some of the emancipations do happen.
You're being awful quiet over here.
I'm listening.
And this is where I would expect you to just, with your work with some of your camps during the summer, I would expect you to have a bit more of an expressive opinion about this.
Well, we just know that those kids are in foster care, but that's, we don't know a lot of history, so, yeah. Yeah, and that goes along with what Monica said, if they are being neglected or abused, then,
Yeah.
We have to find another way. Yeah.
And even in our foster care systems, they have failed. They have broken down. And how this aspect angers me. Common Core angers me because it's kind of a write-off in a way of not paying attention to them. My brother and I were born in California. All of a sudden in the mid-70s, the Mexicans were coming in. They were allowed to come into the schools. It took the teachers away from teaching the regular students, and it became very difficult. So we became 2 years behind.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have been Common Core on purpose because the school systems just couldn't handle it. Well, my parents weren't going to have anything of that and shipped us back to Iowa because they knew that Iowa schools were still doing good. But nowadays, I don't even feel you can go somewhere to a fast food and some kid's trying to do your change and he can't make change.
No.
The most basic thing.
No. And see, Common Core is just the next step from the No Child Left Behind. And I've read a lot of different viewpoints, and do you know who some of the biggest donors behind this whole Common Core thing are?
I don't want to know because I think it might make me sick. But you can tell me.
Well, I'll throw out some of the companies they represent. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Berkshire Hathaway. These are some of the names, or these are some of the companies whose founders are some of the biggest donors to the Common Core movement.
I really think that it's just dumbing our kids so that
It's intentional.
they can pass or get them to go along with things that they want done.
It is intentional. Teach a kid to be just smart enough to push the button, but not smart enough to question what they were taught. That is the whole idea behind Common Core.
Well, and we've heard that for years,
Mhm.
that it's the dumbing down of America.
Yeah.
I mean, for years we've heard that.
Part of the thing of Common Core is don't have them read the classics like Huck Finn, Moby Dick, Frankenstein.
I heard they were getting rid of those books in the schools.
Yeah, they are because they're considered either racist or sexist. But yet, according to Common Core, it's more beneficial for a child to learn to read a Chilton's manual on how to repair a car, or stereo instructions, because those are real world applications. So instead of reading the classics, War and Peace, you read stereo instructions. That is the whole idea behind Common Core. Former President Obama even said that that was the idea of Common Core, was to give education that is more fundamental to the work that is going to be needed.
Or they
Well,
should
that
be.
makes us also more vulnerable as adults to being controlled.
And see, there's been studies done, and these studies are a bit hard to find, but they are out there if you're willing to look. And I wish I'd have thought to print some off. But Harvard did one a couple of years ago that showed conclusively that children that read the classics had higher brain activity, even in leisure, than kids that were actively reading stereo instructions.
Manuals.
So There have been studies that show that classical music, Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, Tchaikovsky, the whole, actually improve memory retention during study time. These are actual medical studies done by Oxford, Harvard, Yale, I mean, some of the big schools. But this information is not being disseminated because schools are not teaching anymore. I have a son that just graduated, and he's having to take remedial reading in college because he didn't get up to what he needed to be able to read the books for the classes he's taking. What does that say about the condition of our
So
schools?
it's just being passed through, just
Yeah,
to getting.
and that was the No Child Left Behind.
Well, with the school, not that quoted for the month, for the year.
Yeah,
So,
but he graduated.
Yeah, but he graduated with other kids, and where are they? And how far back were they?
Right.
What are they having to do if they're trying to continue their education?
Right.
And
But see, that doesn't-
it's not cheap.
No, it's
I mean,
not.
school's not cheap anymore. I remember when I went, my parents maybe paid $40 for my year's worth of books. Now it's, gosh, I don't even know.
90.
Scott and Mary paid $600 for Cassidy to go freshman in high school, $600 just to start school.
That's driver's ed now, and that's a separate thing.
Actually, in Iowa, drive with cops, I think, is $350.
So
I've had some
Smarts-
friends pay $600, but they're not in Des Moines.
Right. So, and see, that's all things parents should be doing. Where are the parents? I'm sorry to say, but I know a lot of parents my age who don't see school as a place to educate. It's a free 6-hour babysitter. They don't have to pay for daycare for that 6 hours their kid's there. Actually, 8 if you consider transportation time to and from wherever they're going. So that's a babysitter. They don't have time to actually pay attention to what their kids are being taught because they're busy, as you said, working 2, 3, 4 jobs. Sometimes both parents are working 3 jobs each just to be able to afford their $500,000 home and their $75,000 cars.
Well, that's because
That's because they have to keep up with the Joneses, which is a whole nother topic. So, but anyway,
yeah. I think a lot of it has to do when parenting is how you were raised. Then a lot of times you'll turn around. Now, granted, society has changed some, and I do see a lot of disconnect. I mean, I was a latchkey kid. My parents were at work until 5 o'clock, so when I got off school at 3:30, 4 o'clock, I came home. I did my chores and everything. I made maybe a snack, me and my brother. And then when the parents came home, we had to talk to them. Well, I talked to my mom. And then, you did more homework or, kind of went over your day. And there was that bonding time then. I don't think the parents really do that a lot.
and see with me, when I was 10, but it was really about age 14 on. My dad worked the graveyard shift, which means he got off at 7 o'clock in the morning, came home, made sure I was up, and got to school. He would go to bed, get up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Mom would get up, go to her first job, usually be there between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. I would get home from school, let myself in, do my homework if I had any, sit down, watch TV. When Dad got up at 4:30, he would get dressed and we would go visit Mom and then watch her drive to her other job, and then she would work from 5 to 9 there.
You went to her
We went to
first
one job. We went to her first job and had dinner with her, and then she went on to her second job, and we went home.
Okay.
And then when Mom got really tired, Dad would stay up, drive Mom to her first job. And then I would walk home from school. Then Dad would get up. We would go get Mom, take her from one job to her other job, and then go back and pick her up, come home, drop us off, and then Dad would go to work. And that's how it was from the age of about 14 to 18. So there was no bonding time. My dinner out was McDonald's, Burger King, something like that. Very rarely
Before
did.
it was a lot of chemicals. I think
So-
it was real back then.
So, and that was my teenage years. And as far as homework was concerned, unfortunately, I didn't have homework because I was so good in my classes. Most of the time, I had my schoolwork done, and I was helping other students. And most people are going, you call that unfortunate? Well, it gave me an excuse to stay home. Sorry, I can't run halfway across the city to do this. I've got homework to do. I need to stay home. So, but yeah, that was the experience. And I'll tell you what, if you did that now, I'd have been out of that home fast, and I don't even think my feet would have hit the floor because the state would have stepped in and said, guess what? Child neglect.
Yeah.
Okay, now back to this. David Smolin argues that the 29th article limits the fundamental rights of parents and other educators and others to educate children in private school by requiring all such schools support the principles contained in the United Nations Charter and a list of specific values and ideals. He argues that the Supreme Court case law has proven that the combination of parental rights and religious liberties provided a broader right of parents in private schools to control the values and curriculum of private education free from state interference. That's the next part that this UN Charter was going to violate. It was going to tell parents what values they could instill in their kids. Now, Brendan has his challenges in school and has his entire life. The one thing that we have heard consistently from his teachers from kindergarten through his senior year was how well-mannered he is, how well-behaved he is in school. And the reason that I, and Sarah, put such a emphasis on manners at the beginning is, if you have a child that's willing to sit down and pay attention and obey the teacher, the rest of it's gravy. If you can get past the behavioral issues and actually have somebody that pays attention, the learning part's easy. It's getting him to sit down and behave is the interesting part. And on that note, just today, at East High School here, a freshman walked in with a hunting knife and a .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol because he was having a dispute with another student and he wanted to protect himself.
I didn't hear that.
He was intercepted by the resource officer before he made it in the school, but he was on school grounds with a loaded semi-automatic pistol and a knife because he was having issues with another student. Okay, I understand the kid wanting to defend himself. I was bullied almost all the way through school. Never once did I ever think about taking it to that level. And the other end of it is, where are the parents of the kid that's causing all these problems to begin with?
Most likely absent.
There's been some rumors over the last few years and rumblings that there are state legislatures that are talking about imposing penalties on parents of bullies that do not take responsibility for their kids and, put their kids to task going, you need to knock this off.
I kind of agree with that, but you cannot.
Well, then it gets to be one-sided because the parents are actually trying to do something.
Yeah, I've
The kids
seen.
are incorrigible, and so then they come after the parents, but, the parents try to do what they want.
Well, not only that is the cliques are so bad in schools that it's a dare, go push that kid's books down. Nobody hears that. They just see that kid being rude and crude.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that the group that in the cliques that they're hanging with and how they feel tormenting somebody else is empowering them, which actually just makes them a weaker person because they're trying to install their power over somebody.
Peer pressure is very, very strong.
Yes, it is. Excuse me. That was part of what drove me to start smoking when I was 13 years old. It was peer pressure.
I do understand it somewhat because if the parents are absent and they're not putting a positive influence in their children, they have allowed this lack of respect to continue on. And I think in a lot of instances, like this kid, what's going on with his parents that he's got to feel like he's got to take a gun and whatnot. He doesn't have any other alternatives
Yeah.
but to take 2 weapons to school to defend himself.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know either, too, some of those cases, what the teachers are saying.
Yeah.
Sometimes the teachers are not there to watch out if something's going on between, say, a bully and another kid. They're not stepping in either. So you see, you can't put it all on the kids, you can't put it all on the parents.
No.
The teachers and other school officials gotta take some of the blame too.
Yeah.
So it spreads all the way around.
Well, the teachers they're not having any control either. They're getting threatened.
I had a teacher bully me when I was in 3rd grade. She told my parents at the first conference, "I hate boys, and your son is number 3 on my list of the kids I hate in my class." My parents went to the principal. My mother started crying. The principal told her to shut up and grow up. That she didn't need to be so weepy. My son, when he was in junior, had a climate class. The teacher told him, "You and your family, the way you think and the way you live is the problem with this planet." That sounds like bullying to me. But this is an educator. This is a teacher that my son was stuck with for an entire semester.
I'm not saying all of them are perfect.
I was gonna say, I think that's probably in the minority.
No, because after the Trump election, the teachers would be standing in the hallway. My son would be walking up, and a kid walked to him and said, "You need to get out of here. Trump supporters aren't welcome here." And teacher would be standing right there and say nothing.
Well, I think a lot of teachers are Democrats because they want a lot of things given to them.
So, but anyway, I'm just saying
That's
that
just my personal opinion.
you know, it's just parents need to take their responsibility seriously. That was part of the reason why schools didn't like me, because I did take my responsibility seriously. One year they were going to bring a Iowa Supreme Court justice in to talk about law once a week with my child, and I drilled that teacher. Who is this justice that's coming in? When are they going to be here? Are they talking case law, or are they talking general constitution? I mean, I drilled this teacher. And the other parents are looking at me like, "What are you doing?" It's like, I want to know what my son is going to be learning so I can know what I have to fix.
And plus, like we just found out Friday, some of the people that go down and pray at the Capitol, he used to go down with them, and 2 of the ladies had been teachers. One was 35 years, I think the other one was like 33. They said they had to get out because these day long, or like whatever days that the kids are out now, or the early
Teacher in service.
they're documenting, telling them what they have to teach on for the next week. So they have no rights anymore.
The Common Core
very
book
difficult.
gives them a whole thing, and even, I think, from what I heard, it lays out particular talk, how they're supposed to say things and whatnot.
Yeah,
And
specific
it's like,
language, and yep.
that's not right. I mean, I'm not saying teachers should just go full bar, but a lot of times that's how kids actually learn, is through that. I have many teachers that were very good at kind of bringing in their own experiences and whatnot into the teaching, which helped it. And I've heard that a lot, that some teachers had to get out
Yeah.
because they didn't want to be told how to teach these kids wrong. Now, with Common Core, you know how math problems used to be down, adding, subtracting, and whatnot? Now they have to go across. And how do you really go across to do add, plus, and minus, and da-da-da-da-da? I mean, you can, but it makes it a lot harder than going down, adding all your things, subtracting them.
I've heard some even presuppose that another reason the Common Core is structured the way it is that when we grew up, our parents understood what we were learning, so they could help us with our homework. With Common Core, since we haven't been through it, we have no clue how they're learning. So we look stupid to the kids, especially the younger ones. So if mom and dad doesn't understand this, the government and the teachers are the saving grace. They can come in and save us from this homework that doesn't make any sense. So from what I've read, and I personally believe this myself, another reason for Common Core is to deliberately take parents' authority away from them by making them look ignorant when it comes to their children's education. Right or wrong, that's my opinion.
Well, pretty
And-
soon cursive will be a secret handwriting
I know.
thing because kids don't know how to read it.
And if you really want to mess with them, and if you want to mess with most people, write in calligraphy. Those of us that know how, which I think I
that's
might
been a
actually
long
remember.
time.
I think I might actually remember. But anyway, Common Core, there is so many things wrong with it in so many ways that I don't know what it's going to take to fix. But I know teachers that also say that were just getting ready to graduate and they're like, we regret this. We don't teach to educate, we teach to test. The kids don't need to know any material other than what's coming up on the next test.
Well, pretty soon the kids will get smart and just be buying and selling the tests just so that they can get
Yeah.
their grades to a certain level and whatnot.
Yeah. And see, that's also part of the idea behind No Child Left Behind in Common Core. If you have tests within a certain parameter, you get money. If you don't, the state steps in and takes over. So you can't teach to actually educate. You have to teach the test because you have to maintain these grade point averages.
Well, it decides how much you get in federal funding.
It's a lot of pressure on the kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're not.
Well, it's pressure also on the teachers
Oh, yeah.
to make sure that they know the kids have what they're trying to teach so that they can test well so that their school can get the money.
And a way that a lot of governments are trying to get around this is trying to say, well, if you're going to teach a subject, then you have to have a mastery of that subject and have to have at least a BA in whatever subject you teach. The idea behind that is if you do that, then you shut down a lot of private schools and you shut down homeschooling.
Homeschooling, yeah.
And that is one way that a lot of states are trying to do that, and that's even a push from the federal government. I went to the Family Leader Summit Friday, and I can say that the state legislatures and the governor are actually very much for homeschooling and parochial schools. They have special funding to help with that. I think we need to take it a step further and provide vouchers. Why do we support athletes? Why do we support movies? Why do we support entertainers? They compete for our dollars. But when it comes to education, one size fits all. Competition brings out the best in people. If you want to have a good school, make them compete with 10 other schools in the district. If you want to have the best teachers, make them compete to work at the best schools. And guess what? You have teachers that compete for the best schools. Pretty soon, every school is going to be the best school because they're competing for the best teachers.
Makes sense?
But schools don't have a choice on a lot of the teachers.
No, they don't. No. And take this for what it's worth. Personally, I think it's a bad idea. There's pros and cons to it, but there are some in Washington, in the Trump administration, that are talking about merging the Department of Education with the Department of Labor. That way they can set the curriculum to meet the projected job needs in the future.
I had heard that.
In some ways that's good because you're going to be preparing kids for specific skill sets. On the opposite end of it, why is the government deciding what jobs are going to be available in 20 years to begin with? What business do they have saying, okay, well, we're going to need a lot of high iron workers and electricians, so we're going to tailor the curriculum for that, even though we might have somebody who's a genetic scientist that might come up with a cure for cancer, but because he's taught an education that's focused around trade skills, he may not be able to explore that bioengineering as much. Why not just put a base curriculum together, explore everything, and then let them decide which career they want to go with? Because here in Des Moines, we have something called Central Campus, and what it is that if you have 2 students at Valley, 3 students at East, and 5 students at Lincoln that want to take automotive repair, instead of having an automotive department at each one of those schools, all those students come down to a central place, and then they have one automotive department, and they can all study it, but you don't have to expend the resources to have an automotive department at each school. So if you do a baseline curriculum at the younger days Once they start getting into junior high and high school and they can start figuring out what their passions and talents are, that's when you have schools like Central Campus to start out on the trade skills. Or maybe some of the more advanced stuff, because I know at Central Campus when I was there, they had robotics, photography, high-end chemistry. I mean, they had some really big majors there. So, you know, if you do something like that, but teach a baseline curriculum, just like we studied a couple weeks ago with the 8th grade quiz. The people that took that gave us the atomic bomb. The people that took that gave us computers. The people that took that gave us the space race. So how is it, if it was good enough to give us the modern world for the most part that we know today, why isn't it good enough to give us the next generation? Give them a baseline and let them figure out what to do with it from there.
Because they want to control it.
But see, yeah. That's just...
We don't agree with it, but that's their goal.
Oh, no,
They
I know.
want to
I
control it.
completely understand. So...
But we just have to fight them for that control, and we need to keep it into the parents. The parents need to be able to decide, and we need to step up when things are going wrong. If I knew that Common Core, though I don't have any kids in school and whatnot, and what I know now, if I knew that then, I would have been one of the biggest people saying, no, these kids are not going to be able to give me change. I don't want that program.
Okay,
One of the things we got that one guy talked about on Friday, just learn to say no to these.
yeah,
We're not saying no.
no. The church just needs to say no. And you keep bringing up the change thing. Okay, so a bit of an anecdotal story, then we'll move on. I used to be a server at a sports bar here in Des Moines. And I had a senior couple that came in. I would say at the time, they were probably in their mid to late 70s. And whenever he sat in my section, he would intentionally give me screwball amounts for his check. And then he would see if I could make change. Every time I made change, without going to the computer, I got an automatic $10 tip. And he said I was one of the few anywhere he went that could actually do it. He said most of them have to either break out their phone, break out a calculator, or go to the computer. I think he stumped me 3 times in a year and a half. So, I mean, that's not tooting my own horn. It's just you keep bringing up the change thing, and, you know, it's terrifying that they can't even do that. That you need a computer.
It came up today. One of my coworkers went to the Iowa game, and he got a pretzel and a pop, and he gave the girl a $100 bill. And I looked at him and I'm like, "You doughhead! You don't give a kid that much money, because that really screws them up." He goes, "There was like 5 kids scrambling with their phones trying to figure out how much change they should give me," and he goes, "It was like 5 minutes later, I finally got my change." He goes, "I did count it. She was right, but it took forever for me to get my change." And that's the scary thing, because, you know, you're at a drive-through or whatnot. You just want to get going. You don't sit there and count your change back. So I try and give them like a big bill and then my change so that they can just give me the dollars back. Because some of them just hit the cash button and they forget to do the money that I handed them. And then that makes a big thing. But if I gave them the exact change, then it's easier for me to fight back and I can count the change back easier. But I try and really watch that, or I'll do my debit card, so then that's really easy because they can just swipe it. But it's just a scary world nowadays that you have to pay attention to that, because I have gotten caught being shorted my change.
And it's not intentional.
No, it's just that they don't know any better and they don't know exactly how to count.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Especially when you pay $600 for your kids to go to high school, and they don't learn how to count change. I would be like
Yeah, it's like-
screaming at the school to pay that much.
Too, they've taken so much money away from the state used to help pay
Mhm.
for this, you know, and they've taken so much money away, they don't have the money for it, so you have to pay for it.
Parents have to pay for it.
But here's the thing, though. The United States, on average, lowest to highest, pays more per capita to educate a child than any other industrialized country on earth, and we used to be in the top 5. Now we're in the 40s. But yet we pay more money than almost any other country on the planet. So I don't care whether we spend $1,100 a child or $11 million a child. We just need to start getting what we pay for. And I'm sorry, watching my son go through school, we're not getting our money's worth. Not by a long shot.
And it's sad when the teachers, and I've ran across a few teachers, that they have to pay for school supplies
Yep.
for their class. They take that out of the money that they're earning and giving it back because the school can't supply it. They don't want to ask the parents for anything else because the parents are already having to bring in tissues, glue sticks.
Backpacks plus a wardrobe. Yeah. But
Well,
yet,
not only, I mean, they bring in things for the classroom.
oh, I know. Glue sticks, markers, pens, pencils, paper. Yeah. But yet, you want to see something scary, and I'm not going to bring up how much. Go look just how much the Des Moines City School District Director makes annually for a salary. I promise you, it is north of 6 digits, almost 7 digits a year. Now, you chop that in half and put the rest of it into funding the actual schools. How much different would our schools be?
Thank you, Sarah. I know she's doing. I was tempted.
So, we can say school, we spend all this money on education, we spend all this money. How much of it is going to the bureaucracy at the top?
Right.
Well, look at our government. They're the best leaders for this, and they're modeling all this.
Bureaucracy.
Yes, thank you.
But yet, who puts that school board together? We do when we vote. How many people can actually tell you when the next school board election is? Tragically enough, I can't even tell you that one. Not right offhand. I know we had one last year. I think we've got one next year. It's every 2 years. So, we talk about voting. That's part of the reason this class was designed, was voting. But we can't worry about Washington. We can't worry about the president, the Senate, the Congress, if we're not paying attention to who's in the school board and what our kids are being taught. Abraham Lincoln had a quote that is so poignant. The political philosophy in the classroom of one generation will be the political philosophy in the government house and the state house the next. So what we are teaching these kids today will be what they practice in government when it's their turn to take over.
Makes sense.
What are we teaching them? Are they going to be able to run a government with what we are teaching them?
If the government becomes pushing buttons, yes.
Even then, they're going to push a button. Okay, are they going to be able to read what that button says to do? Push this button for this. Okay, sorry story, but it's true. In parts of Africa, when they hold elections, they don't put names because people are so illiterate. They have symbols. Like if you want this kind of government, pick the banana. If you want this kind of government, pick the orange. Seriously, that's how they vote because they're that illiterate. They cannot read, so they do not know names or what the policy is. They hear people talk and they say, okay, if you believe what I'm saying, pick a banana. That's what America's going to come to because you're not going to be able to read what you're voting for. That is what our education system is coming to.
I'm sorry, but even the way the wording is of some of this, I don't get it either. I can read it, but it
Well, yeah.
doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
you know?
So, uh-oh.
Well, this is just a superintendent for the Des Moines Community School District. I think this was last year, but they made $294,260.
Okay, so that's a lot less than I thought. But still, $500,000 or $250,000, give or take. That's not including bonuses, healthcare, vacations, or anything else.
Yeah, because they get the IPers. They get
$250,000.
And I'm looking for all of Iowa, and there's barely any of them that are under 100,000.
Okay, so you've got a school district like Colfax Mingo that's struggling to stay alive, and their school superintendent's making $100,000 a year?
Let's see here.
Do we see a problem here?
What is wrong with this picture?
Now, here's another tragic part. Our state legislatures, those that we elect to go represent us in the state house, They work from January to April. They only make $25,000.
Colfax superintendent last year made $130,000.
But yet, a state legislature only makes $25,000. Now, granted, they only work about 4 or 5 months, but still, that's only $6,000 a month.
Well, they work
And 100
10 months.
Yeah,
I mean, granted, they're supposed to be year round, but
yeah.
$185,000 for Urbandale.
holy buckets. I need to be a superintendent.
So, and
Yeah.
this goes back to parenting. Part of our responsibility as parents is making sure who's educating our kids. Is the school superintendent for Urbandale?
If you don't keep kids educated, which is what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
then they can't go and read between the lines and find out how much they're making and
Yeah,
and quote them
well,
out.
here's 2 other presidential quotes. One is, I want to say it's James Madison said, "A well-educated, well-informed populace is essential to the survival of the republic." Essential.
West Des Moines is really scary. 1,900 or 199,284. That's the highest I've seen on here, and that was for West Des Moines.
I thought Des Moines was 200.
Was it 200?
Yeah, I thought you said it was like 250 something.
Yeah, 230 something, because it was
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
There's
$250,000. They get paid way too much.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
has
So-
all the schools in here, and there's a lot of.
As parents, we need to pay attention who we're electing to these positions. Now, granted, the school superintendent is hired by the school board. We do not elect the school superintendent, but we do
But
need
we-
to start paying attention to who
we
we
elect
elect
the
to the
school
school
board.
board, because then that'll determine who we hire to be the school superintendent. So if we're going to take our jobs as parents seriously, and I mean seriously, then we've got to get out of the stratosphere and we get in the weeds, which means school board elections, going to school board meetings, saying, hey, why are you doing this? Why isn't this being done? So,
You need to teach our kids how to make change. That'd be my biggest thing.
And cursive.
yeah, cursive is going to be the new MI6 code language in another 20 years because not one kid knows how to read it. Although the way I read cursive, it looks more like Egyptian hieroglyphics anyway. So,
You know, I did read the most interesting thing on Facebook. It was probably about 2 months ago. There was a teacher that was doing an after-school program. She was taking kids to nursing homes. And the elders that were reading the books to them and everything were so thankful that the kids wanted to come and spend time with them that they sent them, the elders sent them thank you cards. All they know how to do is
right,
cursive.
cursive, right.
So it was a great learning point for those kids because the teacher kind of went through it with them and said, this is the only way these people, they were taught
Yeah.
to write this way. And so that this is the way that they correspond back. And the kids really received it very well. And she goes, a lot of the kids were starting to receive it. She wasn't punishing them. She wasn't
teaching moment.
educating them to do it
Yeah.
and getting in trouble with the school or anything, but she was at least acknowledging them, letting them get that experience to it and everything, which I thought was very commendable because she went above and beyond. And it's going to be hard to find teachers that will take that time to do that.
And with that, most of you have been exposed to my history library. And I've done a lot of restaurant work, which means I've worked with a lot of kids. And I remember there was this one little 16-year-old at a job I had in Ankeny, said that she had to write a paper on everything she'd seen in her lifetime. She was, I think, a sophomore in high school. She looks at me and goes, I don't know, what have I seen in my lifetime? What have you seen in your lifetime? 2.5 hours later, and it only hit the 90s. She looked at me and goes, you have not seen all that in your lifetime. And I'm like, oh, I've left out a lot of stuff. She looked at me and goes, okay.
But she didn't know about you as your
No,
awesome
she
memory.
yeah. And then there was another kid that I was working with at another fast food place, he said his teacher taught him something. I'm like, well, did they talk about this? An hour later, he looked at me and goes, why aren't you a history teacher? I learned more from you in an hour than I did from her in a semester. So, it's just, teaching is not hard, but you have to have a passion for it. You just can't sit there and on this date, this happened. This is what happened because of it.
Well-
You know what? We are all teachers,
Oh, yes,
and
we
it
are.
starts at home.
Absolutely.
I don't teach like you do, but I'm wonderful with Hudson. I'm wonderful with Cassidy. I can teach them just because, and I have a passion for it. You know, just in taking a walk. You know, but it starts at home because we're all teachers.
Well,
Oh, absolutely.
And you got to remember that is we want them to be knowledgeable,
Yes.
and you want your grandchildren to learn the things that you already know, that they should know, and that they may need to know. There's a lot of things that they're teaching nowadays. These kids don't need to know. That's not going to help them in life. I'm sorry, but I went through calculus and algebra and geometry. Geometry, I do use some of that. But there's some things I learned, I'll never utilize it in my whole entire life. We need to be focusing on what these kids are going to utilize. Because if we're not making sure as parents, as teachers, or as
Responsible citizens.
electors of teachers and
Responsible
officials, we're going to let these kids waste away in knowledge that they don't really need. I loved it when we went to Israel and we went to that museum and we found out that when they turned 18, they had to go into the military. Everybody.
Yep. 4 years
And-
for guys, 2 years for girls.
Yep. And what was where they had to start out? The museums. They had to learn the history. What they didn't learn in school, they got drilled in their daily job learning through the museums and the educational spots and whatnot. Once that was all done, then they could elect to enroll again or get out. But what would be so wrong if our kids had to do that? They would learn so much more, Go look at the monument, just because I just went
Right,
through all
Mount
that.
Rushmore, right.
Mount Rushmore, Why did those presidents end up on the rock? I don't even know officially why they picked those four. Well,
They're
Abe, I
rock
do,
stars.
and Washington, I do.
Okay, go ahead. But I've got a bit of a joke on this, but
But I mean, and what was the significance of some of our monuments? I mean, I might have learned some of that in high school, but it wasn't really installed. I've totally lost it. And when it came to, in the beginning, when we were doing
the Constitution,
the
Bill of Rights.
Constitution and stuff like that, it was, I know I probably touched in it in high school, but I know they don't touch in it. And so those kids don't know their rights. They don't know what they have power to do.
And you know why? What's the easiest way to steal from somebody? They don't know that they have it to begin with. Just like Satan, he steals for our authority from us in Jesus Christ. Why? Because we don't understand the authority we've got. Same concept. So there's a bunch more we can cover on the UNICEF, but it's getting late, and I do want to cover some of the scriptures. So there's only a few, but we're going to start out with Father's authority, and I think this should be parents' authority, but Father's authority. Numbers chapter 30, verses 3 through 5.
And that's so cool to be able just to go back to the Word.
Mhm.
This Bible's been in existence thousands of years.
And after my ramblings, we need to get. Yeah, I definitely got off on it tonight, and I do apologize if I sounded a little hot-headed tonight. This is a subject that I am very, very passionate about.
Ready for it?
Whenever you are, please.
Or if a woman makes a vow to the Lord and binds herself by some agreement, while in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father holds his peace, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement with which she has bound herself shall stand. But if, there's two of those words, but if her father overrules her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows nor her agreements by which she has bound herself shall stand, and the Lord will release her, because her father overruled her.
Okay. Now, this one is a little tricky. Did it say the day she made the vow, and her father said no, or did it say when the father found out about it? I should ask that a different way.
When he hears the vow.
Right. So if she made a vow on a Monday and he didn't find out about it until Wednesday, and it's due on Friday, when he hears about it on Wednesday, he can nullify it, right?
Right.
Okay. Now that's a pretty extreme version of parental authority. Now the other half of that is a husband has the authority to do the same thing with his wife. That's a part a lot of people don't want to hear. Parents on education. We all know, or most of us know, that in biblical times and in times of antiquity, parents usually arranged the marriages. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy 21, 18 through 21.
Suppose a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey his father or mother, even though they discipline him. In such case, the father and mother must take the son to the elders as they hold court at the town gate. The parents must say to the elders, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious and refuses to obey. He is a glutton and a drunkard." Then all the men of his town must stone him to death. In this way you will purge this evil among you, and all Israel will hear about it and be afraid.
Did it just say that if you've got a kid that absolutely refuses to obey, that it's legal to kill him?
Yep.
That's pretty extreme. Now, why do you think God was that extreme about it, though? Let's see if we can figure out why God said it's okay to kill your kid.
He didn't want it to come back and bite him later.
Part of the reason, but if you look at society today, you've got one kid that starts that's in the middle of a protest. All of a sudden, he picks up a garbage can and throws it through a store window. Okay, well, 3 other kids are going to say, "Hey, this kid didn't get in trouble for that." Guess what? We're going to pick up garbage cans. We're going to pitch it through 3 more windows. And then 5 kids are going to say, "Hey, they're not getting in trouble, so we're going to go flip over a police car."
Well, it'd be the same aspect of death penalty. If people saw that if they molested a child, they would be just immediately put to death, how many molesters would there be out there? They may fear for their life.
Right.
They may go into hiding or
Right.
kidnap children or whatnot, but I think there would be a lot less people if they felt like the death sentence would be upon them if they got convicted of it.
And mild child molesters and people like that, I think, should be put to death. But that's just me. So, parents and discipline. Let's go to Proverbs 22:15. And if you notice, we're going through here. Parent educating, parent discipline, and penalty for dishonoring parents all have one verse in common, and that's 21:18 through 21. So God was pretty serious about children obey your parents. I'd say he was real serious about that one. So Proverbs 22:15.
A youngster's heart is filled with foolishness, but physical discipline will drive it far away.
I heard a pastor once put it like this, and he specialized in deliverance ministries. He goes, "When I was a kid, I didn't go through a deliverance, but I'll tell you what, my mama and that switch drove those demons out of me all the same."
Sounds like Jesse Duplantis.
Actually, it was John Eckhart. So,
Sounds like something Jesse would say too.
so I mean, and who remembers Principal Joe Young, I think he was, over in New Jersey about 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. He walked into a school that was full of troublemakers and called all the kids into the auditorium, read off the name of like 15 2A students and expelled them on the spot. Bam. Because they were 18, 19, 20 years old, drug dealers, everything else like that. And they were a real disruption to the school. Well, the parents came back and tried to sue the school district, sue Joe directly. And he goes, look, all I'm doing is instilling discipline, and discipline is not the enemy of enthusiasm. If you notice, some of the children that excel the most are the ones that know exactly where the line is and how far that leash stretches. Because when they know where their boundaries are, they say, okay, this box may be only this big, but it goes as high as I want it. So kids that have boundaries and discipline actually excel more because they aren't so busy testing their parents. They're busy testing themselves. But kids without a lot of discipline, kids like myself who grew up in a home where basically it was fine one day and not okay the next, but that's a whole other story. I zip, 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 zip. I was like a spider web. I never knew which way I was going to go. But I didn't really spend a lot of time trying to go up.
Well, and none of these scripture verses say abuse.
No.
That isn't what they're talking about.
No.
You don't beat them, until they're black and blue.
No, absolutely not.
But
Now-
people interpreted things in a whole nother way. It's everybody's interpretation is all different. That's why offenses are started, or people have a misunderstanding because, granted, we're not all on the same level. We've all not been taught the same thing.
Physical punishment in the U.S.
The sad thing is nowadays parents are scared to spank their children because if their child says anything to anybody, then DHS will come in and do an investigation, and then they'll have embarrassment.
And actually, did you know that Iowa ranks number 39 out of 50 for one of the worst places for government involvement in child care? We rank near the bottom for state interference. That ought to tell you something. We've got cases of children starving to death. But yet, and DHS does nothing about it. But yet, on the other hand, we've got parents who may be a little stern, maybe a little heavy-handed, not abusive, but very strict. And DHS falls on them like a bunch of vultures. You can't do this to your kid. You can't do that to your kid. Oh, never mind these kids starving over here. That doesn't matter. We're talking about you spanking your kid because they haven't listened after the fourth time you told them not to stick their finger in a light socket. And that's how the state of Iowa is. Tragic but true. So, and we're going to do one.
I don't know if it's one of these about children honoring your parents, that your life will be long if you honor your parents.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that one of them?
No, I don't remember if I put that one in there or not. It's children honoring parents. Exodus 12 or 20, verse 12. I think that may be the one you're looking for.
That's probably it.
Now, in the to the idea of corporal punishment, there is one school district. I just saw it on the news. I want to say it was on Fox a few days ago, where there's a school district that is allowing parents to sign a waiver that says, if my child gets too far out of line and they cannot be corrected any other way, you have permission to give them a good what's for on the rump. That I'm on the fence about. Should a teacher be allowed to put hands on my child because they refuse to obey? I don't know about that, because it depends on the age. If they're real young, I'd say that sends mixed message, because then the kid's scared. I don't know who's going to give me a whooping for what. Okay, that's my one thing there. On the other hand, if you've got a kid that absolutely will not sit down, and maybe that at school is going to be the only place where they get that kind of correction, that may be just what they need to straighten themselves around. So, you know, that's something you can argue with yourself about. Now, the one that a lot of people miss, and you can see it in society today all too well, is Genesis 33:5 is children are a gift from God.
Yes, they are. Then Esau looked up and saw the woman and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant."
Children are a gift from God. And there's a lot of scripture verses on this I left out way back when I said this was just sort of an overview. If you want to get down in deeper yourself, you can. I know that there are over 17 verses talking directly to fathers. And I only put down like 3 or 4 that talk directly to fathers. But there's over 17 verses that talk to fathers directly. So, if that's something you want to go and research on your own, you can. It's actually a lot of fun. One of the ones that always gets me is, fathers provoke not your children to anger. Now, a lot of people think that means, well, you can't discipline your kids. No, what research I've done on that one says, be consistent. If your no is no today, then your no is no tomorrow. If your yes is yes today, then your yes is yes next week. Stay consistent. So, that's what not provoking him to anger. And, you know, which makes sense.
Well, also, it installs the lack of confusion. Because I think a lot of times children get confused and don't know what's up and what's down, because one day it's this way, the next day it's not. There's too many topsy-turvies already in their own life if they don't have a reliable sense. It's kind of, I have a godson that's autistic, and he needs a set schedule. If his schedule gets off, that throws him completely off. It's the same way with children, especially our children at camp. They need to have the day planned out for them and everything else, so that there's no surprises and that they know what is to come. And that's the same way with the parenting. If we stay pretty much the same, unless a special occurrence, a birthday or something like that, if we can stay the same and consistent, we can show them that there is consistency in life and not all these variables that they're going to run across.
Plus, it makes our life easier. Okay, what did I say the last time they asked this question? Was it yes or no? Now, the biggest thing that I see, and I even ran into this with my ex-wife, was consistency in the parenting.
Yeah.
I would say no. As soon as I walked out the door, Mom would say, yes, just don't let your dad find out.
I kind of went through that a little bit too.
So, you know, it's not only consistency with the kid, but the parents have to know, this is what we want, this is the objectives we want, this is the road we're going to take to get there. Do we agree? Because if you don't have consistency in parenting, then there's no consistency in the child. If you have no consistency in the child, then what's their life going to be like?
Chaos.
Yeah. And that's not accounting for external influences, you know, like neighbors, brothers and sisters,
Peer pressure.
peer pressure. So, you know, I mean, just got to keep it consistent.
So, you know, being a parent, we do discipline our children in love, you know, and we've always told our kids we may not have always done everything right, and if we had some things to do over, we would maybe
Absolutely.
change things, but we did it because we thought it was the best thing at the time to do, and we did it because we loved you. And so, you know, some of these scripture verses portray God as being not loving.
Yeah.
And they might think, why would I want to serve a God like that?
Right.
But God loves us so much. I mean, He created us. And He only wants the best for us. And we have to be disciplined. We can't just go off and hurt other people,
Jason knows I love.
So, it does seem kind of harsh when God says those things, but He loves us so much. And I
Well, you
love my
think-
kids a lot, but not as much as God loves them.
Chasing those I love.
Well, you got to think of it this way. When kids are growing up, and then we'll just go back to the teenage years, they want to go out and party and whatnot, but you knew that there could be some bad influences, and you're like, no, you need
Discipline
to stay
and love.
home. The thing of it is we were looking out for their best intentions and their welfare. That's one of the things that God has always wanted for us too,
I love
is the
those
best
ideas.
welfare. What is going to enhance our life? What is going to possibly destroy our life? One bad decision of going to a party and drinking and then driving could wreck not only that person's life, but the whole carload. I had that happen in my class where there was bad decisions picked. I mean, I'm not saying my decisions in high school were all that great. I made some really bad ones too. But if we don't have that kind of supervision as we're growing up from our parents, and then we don't have it from our Heavenly Father, I understand why God's allowed some of the things to happen in my life and the punishments that I endured or the hardships that I endured. Those were, you know what, you didn't make the best decisions, Monica, and if you make these better decisions, these blessings are going to come to you.
Absolutely.
And those are lessons that it takes a while, some of us to learn longer, or it takes us longer to learn, but I take it in that same aspect. Yeah, there may have been some harsh things. OWI wasn't a treat. Some of the other things, just, they were because I had my own free will and I was stubborn. And I wanted to be rebellious at those times. And when you put it into those aspects and whatnot, I think it
And see, your maturity, a lot of it has to do with how mature we are, or where we are age-wise, not but spiritually too, But I just think of, we can't let little Hudson go take knives. He doesn't understand. Or Cassidy, who's 14. We can't just give her a car, They can't just buy her a car. You have to have some maturity, and that'll come. But we do have to make some decisions for them until they can do that.
I've actually heard it explained this way, and this made more sense to me than a lot of things that I've heard over the years. From birth to teen, you teach them right and wrong. From teen to adulthood, you teach them how to take what you taught them preteen and apply it to their life as they go into adulthood. So you got them when they're young, teach them right and wrong, and then teach them to exercise right and wrong in their teenage years before they become an adult. That makes more sense to me than a lot of things I've heard over the years when it comes to parenting. And it's simple.
And it's okay that they make mistakes, but you're there to help them through it and support them. And it's like you said, you'll learn from them. You learn. That's kind of how you grow and mature too. As long as they don't hurt somebody else.
Or themselves, substantially.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. One thing about me is I was very adventurous and something of a monkey. I really liked climbing around in trees and that. And my folks had 2 huge trees in the yard, and I was going through and getting all the dead branches out. Well, I thought I would slide on an old rope from one tree to the other. Well, that's not quite how it worked out. I made it about 2 feet from the tree. The rope snapped, and I fell 20 feet flat on my back.
Wow.
And my mother said that I hit so hard that I actually bounced. So,
So you learned, you didn't do it again?
I didn't do it. I still climb trees.
He didn't think he was a monkey anymore.
Oh no, I realized that not every rope you pick up is built for rappelling, is what I learned. So, but anyway, no, I still climb trees to this day. If I can find a tree that I can fit in, I'll climb trees.
You're fine.
Alright.
So anyway,
We better end on that note.
I've got one. Okay, I've got one blusher over here, so I think on that it's time to say goodnight. So I thank you. We're going to close in prayer and then we're going to release. Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you that as we discuss parenting tonight and all the things that the world says we're supposed to do or not to do, you are the perfect parent. And if we want to know how to raise our children right, you are the perfect example. How have you raised us? How do you discipline us? How do you correct us? How do you lead us? How do you teach us? How do you allow us to make mistakes so that we can learn from it and grow? You are the perfect example of how we are to be as parents. And as parents, children, especially young children, their first understanding of who you are is seeing how we are. So if we want to set a good example for you, for our children, then we've got to be like you when they're young. And we thank you that even when we do make mistakes, even when we do miss the mark, your word promises that you can take everything that is meant for bad and make it for good. So even the mistakes we made, even the mistakes some of us we continue to make, you can turn it all around and make something wonderful out of it. And we thank you. We thank you for this time together. We thank you we're here. I felt you here today. I definitely could tell that you were amongst this conversation. As we release tonight, I prayed safe journeys upon each of those here. Keep them well and safe. Let them have peace in their home, peace in their rest. Wake them ready to face the new day. Keep us well and safe until we meet again. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.